Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Homestead Miami Speedway, one of the best mile-and-a-half tracks we go to on the schedule, where it has incredible racing, side-by-side action, especially on the restarts, tire management, and ripping the wall will literally, gain you momentum off the corners. And yesterday, in the middle race of the round of 8, a former champion finally breaks through the track he's been trying to win at for a long time. Let's get into all that went down yesterday. Number 1, Kyle Larson finally has won a cup race at Homestead as he dominated yesterday's Dixie Vodka 400 at Homestead, winning it over Ross Chastain, AJ Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, and Brad Keselowski. Kyle Larson, as we all know, is one of the most talented drivers in the Cup Series and has been very good at Homestead in previous years. However, he hasn't been able to break through and win there in the Cup Series. He's won there before in Xfinity, just hadn't done it in Cup. He had a chance in 2015 playing the spoiler in the Championship 4, but didn't get the job done and finished in the top 5. Had a great car in 2016. It looked like he was going to do it, but fell back a little bit late. Had a great car in 2017, fell back late, and in the middle of the championship battle, which he wasn't a part of, between Truex and Kyle Busch. Had a great car in 2018, spun late, and had to settle for a top 10. Was not really a factor in 2019. Of course, 2020 he didn't race because he was suspended indefinitely by NASCAR for the entire year. Last year, he had a pretty good car in this race. Wasn't really a dominant car, but he was definitely a car running top 10 pretty much the entire day. And yesterday, he brought his A game. In a week where it's been so much controversy around Kyle Larson, but not the way you think it is. He was part of a controversial moment last weekend. If you all remember, last weekend at Las Vegas, he was racing Bubba Wallace at the beginning of Stage 2. On off of Turn 4, Larson's car got a little bit loose, and the air sent Bubba Wallace up into the outside wall, and Bubba thought that was, dirty driving, so he retaliated and literally dumped and wrecked Kyle Larson, and also took out his Toyota teammate Christopher Bell in the process. And Bubba felt that the way Larson raced him off of 4 was not cool, and he showed his displeasure with Larson by walking out of the car after the incident, went over and started shoving Larson, who had literally no, vendetta against Bubba. He didn't do anything wrong. Bubba just overreacted for the most part. And that resulted in Bubba Wallace getting suspended for this weekend's race. So Larson was coming in hoping to try to move past that, which obviously he did despite the incident that he was caught up in. He said, I feel bad for him, but I didn't mean to get into him, and it was not my intention whatsoever. He was able to bounce back and dominate this weekend's race. He won Stage 1, Stage 2, and the whole thing at the very end. He led over 190 plus laps. That car was dominant. At times late in the race, he was getting some challenges, especially when he was stuck back in traffic for a little bit, but that car was so fast that he was able to rip his way back to the front, running the high side like he normally does, up against the wall, literally inches off the wall. This guy can drive a race car. Obviously, he's not a part of the playoffs anymore, because if you remember a couple weeks ago, the week before last weekend, he was running well in the top 15 at the Roval, and it looked like he was going to advance until coming out of the intersection onto the NASCAR Turn 1, he bounced under the wall, and that resulted in the upper right rear control arm being broken, and they had to work it on pit road for a couple laps. He lost laps, he lost positions, and at the very end, he was eliminated because of where he finished, and as well as the Christopher Bell win, because Bell needed to win that race to make it to the next round. That eliminated Larson from trying to have any chance to defend his title. So the thing that they wanted to do at the end of the season was to gain momentum for next year by running well and winning races. They've done that this past weekend, and I feel very happy. They had the best car. Literally, other than a couple times in early runs, when it came to the long runs, nobody had anything for Kyle Larson. That car was just absolutely strong. Maybe at this point next year, he'll be in the round of 8 when we go back here in 2023, but it was still a big win for the 5 team considering what they dealt with last weekend with the Bubba Wallace incident. So big congrats to Kyle Larson and the 5 team on a big win at Homestead yesterday. Number 2, Martin Truex Jr., so close to his first win of 2022, loses it with a late race yellow pit stop. Martin Truex Jr., as we all know, 5 years ago at this venue, celebrated a championship and a championship year. But this year has not been a championship year for this team. They have struggled at times. They have not won a race yet this year. They failed to make the playoffs, being eliminated at Daytona from Brian Blaney. This time, Martin Truex Jr. had a good race car, starting a little bit in the mid part of the grid at the start, but worked his way to the front. I mean, he's always known for running well here. He had a good race car, and late in the race, he was leading, and it looked like he was going to break the winless streak. He was going to be the 20th different winner of 2022. But then a caution came out late for Tyler Reddick, wrecking off of turn 2 and hitting the inside wall in the backstretch. That brought everyone down pit road for the final time under yellow with about 20 plus laps left. But while Truex was trying to slow down to get to his pit, he slowed down a little too much and got bumped from behind by Kyle Larson. Truex spun around, but thankfully he was able to land right in his pit box when he got spun. Ultimately, though, he lost his track position. Now, you can pit in your pit box, by the way, if you get spun backwards, and if your car perfectly is within the boundaries of your pit box, you can go ahead and work on the car anyways. But that cost Truex a chance to win the race. He said, though, in his post-race interview, I don't hold it against the 5. It wasn't his fault. I made a mistake. And he said it's pretty much, the tail of our season for the most part. He was able to rebound from that pit stop and was able to work his way back up to get a 6th place finish. But what could have been if that incident didn't happen? Maybe it could have been Truex battling Larson for the win, and maybe it could have been Truex winning the race. But we'll never know. But, obviously he was not happy about what happened. He wasn't holding it against Larson. He was holding it against himself, saying he made the mistake. But Martin Truex Jr. now has only 2 more chances to win this year, and that's next weekend in Martinsville and, of course, the finale at Phoenix. Or else this is going to be the first time since 2014 that he has gone winless, and that would be a pretty big shock. I do believe next year Martin Truex Jr. will get back to the playoffs, and he will be a race-winning championship contender again. It's just been one of those years for him. It's just nothing much you could do, but came so close yesterday despite having a really good race car. Number 3, great battle for second between former teammates of colleague in the Xfinity Series, Ross Chastain and AJ Allmendinger. Ross Chastain and AJ Allmendinger, first of all, had great race cars yesterday. Ran in the top 5, top 10 pretty much the entire day. Had really good speed in both cars. Chastain was the highest finishing playoff driver at the end of the day yesterday, finishing 2nd place. And he now has a 19-point cushion going into Martinsville. He was not really on par with Kyle Larson's. Again, as I mentioned, nobody had anything for him, especially when it came to the long runs. But Chastain's car was still strong nonetheless. And he had a phenomenal battle at the end of the race against his old teammate from colleague in the Xfinity Series and AJ Allmendinger. Of course, Allmendinger has been in the news recently that he is going back racing full-time in the Cup Series next year in 2023 for colleague racing, and it's the colleague car he's driving. He wasn't supposed to run this race, but because Alex Bowman's out with a concussion and Noah Gragson's running that car, which he would have run this car in this race, but Allmendinger was in it, and he had a great battle with Chastain. They were both battling side by side, exchanging the 2nd position at the very end of the race, racing hard but clean, racing each other with respect. And of course, again, these guys have been teammates in Xfinity and colleague. I had a feeling they would race each other cleanly, at hard but clean, and they would race each other with respect, and that's exactly what we saw from those guys. We've seen a little bit of a change of Chastain and how he races guys the later part of this year. I think he's learned to be aggressive, but also learned to do it the right way and not the wrong way. He took a page out of what happened to Noah Gragson early this year at the Road America race, where Gragson in the Xfinity Series race turned around stage care him, setting off a chain collision. NASCAR docked him a lot of points for the way he ran and did that incident. And since then, Noah Gragson in the Xfinity Series has been so dominant, has won races and has won races and run well in races the right way. Aggressive, but also running aggressively the right way and not literally just like dumping or wrecking a guy. He's ran hard and clean and done it the right way. And of course, now he's punched his ticket to the championship for the Xfinity Series title. But AJ Allmendinger and Ross Chastain just had a great battle for 2nd place yesterday. That's what we want to see. Hard racing, clean racing, and racing each other the way that it's supposed to be, and not literally just driving a guy up the racetrack or pushing a guy out pretty much because I want you out of the way. They just race each other hard and clean. It was good action from both of those guys yesterday, and a good points day for the one team. Number 4, playoff drivers that fell behind and are now facing a must-win at Martinsville. They include Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe. Christopher Bell, as we all know, made it to the round of 8 off the win at the Roval, was part of the Bubba Wallace Kyle Larson incident last week, which he did not deserve to be a part of. He had no part in that incident whatsoever. He was just an innocent victim. I felt like if they came into this weekend, they had a chance to run well and maybe gain some points, or maybe had a chance to win, because this track kind of suits his driving style. It's kind of a racetrack that wears out the tires, and you have to run the high side of the racetrack, which Bell is known for doing, considering his sprint car experience like Kyle Larson and Tyler Reddick and Chase Briscoe. However, he started on the front row, but they really did not have speed in their car whatsoever. I was puzzled to see them run. They finished in the 11th spot, but that's not what I was expecting out of them. I thought they were going to do better than that, but they're now pretty much facing a must-win, being at least 28 to 35 points below the cutoff going into Martinsville. It's going to be a must-win. He's okay there, but I have a feeling it's not going to work out for Christopher Bell in this upcoming race. But he could have capitalized if he had a good race car and a good run yesterday. I mean, he got 11th, but it just wasn't enough for him. And then for Chase Briscoe, who at the beginning of last weekend's race fell back early, got a lap down, got his lap back, and finished inside the top 5. This week, however, started out strong, fell back, fell a lap down, and towards the closing laps of stage 2, he hit the wall in turns 1 and 2, and that knocked the power steering. It broke something in the car. I think he said, I lost power steering, and something broke in the car after he made contact with the wall. That knocked him out of the race, and he finished dead last. And now 45 points down. It is definitely a must-win for Chase Briscoe. So 2 guys that I felt like could have been in the conversation for a good run yesterday and made up some points, they're now facing must-wins when we go to Martinsville next weekend. So just an unfortunate deal for 2 guys that have had really good breakout seasons for the most part. But now they're pretty much facing must-win at Martinsville, and it's going to be a little bit of a tricky challenge for both of those guys. And number 5, the racing at Homestead. I was looking so forward to this race with the next-gen car and what we've seen from it at the mile-and-a-half tracks this year. We saw a great race at Vegas last week. This track, obviously, it's a lot like what, up until they repaved Atlanta. It's a worn-out racetrack where you can run anywhere. Bottom, middle, high groove, up against the wall, ripping the racetrack, gaining momentum, saving your tires for the most part. It was just some good racing in general for the most part. When we got into long runs, there were guys that spread out because they had, managing their tires better, had good handling race cars. Other guys were struggling for the most part, but there was some good side-by-side action in the long runs. The short runs, especially in those restarts, were phenomenal. Those guys were racing side-by-side all over the place, and there were some great battles. As I mentioned, the battle for second at the end between Chastain and Allmendinger was fantastic. But just great racing in general yesterday at Homestead. I was very impressed with the way that the next-gen car held its own at Homestead Miami Speedway. Obviously, now we're done with mile-and-a-halves for the year, but I would just like to say that the racing we've seen at the mile-and-a-halves and the 2-mile tracks this year with the next-gen car has been very productive, and I have enjoyed the product that we've gotten at those tracks this year, except for Texas Motor Speedway. We all know that track is pretty much done unless they reconfigure and do something with it. But just great racing at the mile-and-a-half, 2-mile tracks this year. Like Vegas was great. Nashville Speedway was great. Michigan was great. Fontana was great. Homestead was good. Charlotte Coca-Cola 600 this year was great. There were some good races on the mile-and-a-halves that we went to this season and the 2-mile tracks. I was very impressed with the product that we have brought to those tracks this year with this next-gen car. Will it be the same next year? Now we'll have a year of research and development on these cars and those tracks. We'll see, but hopefully we have that same product. But the racing this year at those tracks, just been great. We saw another good one yesterday. So now we are off to Martinsville Speedway, the paperclip. And this race is going to determine who goes to the championship for. To basically give you the rundown, Joey Logano is the only driver right now who knows he will be racing for a championship off the win at Vegas last week. He goes into Martinsville with no stress, no worries whatsoever. Above the cutoff behind him, 19 points above Ross Chastain, 11 points above Chase Elliott, our regular season champion. They had a 14th place finish yesterday, but it could have been better if they had done it, if they didn't get caught by an incident of leaving the pit lane and losing a lap. They were able to get it back, but they never got the track position back. They were able to get some stage points to kind of help them. William Byron, who had a good car at times yesterday, but fell back a little late, he's now 5 above. Denny Hamlin, he's below the cutoff line. About 15 to 20 points below the cutoff line is Ryan Blaney. He also had a good car yesterday, but when leaving the pit lane under green flag pit stops, apparently he grabbed a gear at the wrong time and spun the car out on the access road, which, was during green flag pit stops, and that's what put guys like Elliott and Logano a lap behind, and they had to take the wave around. It screwed their race as well as Blaney's. He finished in 17th spot. He is kind of in a position where he needs to probably win, but there's still the chance he could point his way in, but I think it's more likely going to take a win for him to get in. And then, obviously, Christopher Bell, Chase Briscoe, with their finishes and their point situation, they're in must win. So what will happen when we go to Martinsville next week? Which 3 drivers will join Joey Logano in Phoenix to battle for the championship? And which 4 drivers are going to be left wondering, boy, we came so close to battling for a title. What did we do wrong? And how are we going to look back on this and wonder what could have been? It'll be an interesting race. Obviously, we ran at the nighttime row this year. It wasn't the best. Maybe this time around, with a spot in the championship 4 on the line, we're going to see some great racing, some beating and banging, some side-by-side action. I cannot wait for this race next Sunday. Who will join Logano? And will another non-playoff driver play the spoiler? Because that seems to be the narrative of these playoffs. Playoff drivers normally don't win, and non-playoff drivers get the job done. We shall see what happens next Sunday and see who advances to the Championship 4. So thank you so much for watching this week. Subscribe, like. Congrats once again to Kyle Larson and the 5 team on their big win at Homestead yesterday. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!